Start recording. Okay, there it goes. Excellent. All right. So today we're going to be doing a little spectrum welcome for anybody that's not very familiar with who we are or what we do, or some of our initiatives that we have going on. We're also going to introduce our faculty mentoring committee, which we have 2 members present of today. And we are also going to go over personal statements with some sample prompts and general advice. And we're going to wrap up with a discussion and a Q&A just in case anybody has any questions. I believe we might have an anonymous question form. So if somebody could drop that in the chat, and then you can submit questions through that will be monitored, or you can just raise your hand and ask questions. Either one. Okay. So to give a brief recap of the programs that Spectrum has going on currently, we currently have the professional development lunch talks going on. That's every Wednesday at noon. And the link gets sent out through a department like email blast, and we have multiple different topics, including traditional professional development like REUs and how you apply for them, applying for grad schools, etc. And we also have things upcoming in the programs about diversity and awareness. We recently had a session about the dangers of a single story, the video of which should be going out shortly, and it will be posted on our new YouTube. We also have the mentoring program, which I think is what most of you are familiar with. So we have, as of today, 11 mentees and 11 mentors. Each mentee is paired with 2 mentors, and they can go to them for help with anything from classes to how the department runs, absolutely anything. We also have 4 graduate students that are available to talk to you about the ins and outs of grad school more than an undergrad would be able to if you don't feel comfortable speaking to a professor. We also have started the incident report form. This can be located on our website. So the incident report form is fully anonymous if you would like it to be, and that's where you go to report anything that you feel shouldn't have happened. If you feel uncomfortable raising those concerns to a professor, you can submit it through the form. They will go to our HR rep, Faith Gale, who just joined the meeting, and she will help progress the situation should it need to be progressed and get it to the right people. And again, that's fully anonymous. You do not have to put your email unless you would like to be contacted about the situation. One of the big things that happened at the beginning of Spectrum is the Code of Professional Conduct being signed into department bylaws. So the Code of Professional Conduct lays out explicitly a rule that states that no person can be against for any reason, including race, ethnicity, creed, etc. Whereas before there hadn't been such a code of professional conduct for the department specifically, we went ahead and made a department specific one explicitly laying out all of these rules. So now there is something to turn to. And that was passed in May of 2020. We also have the faculty mentoring committee. So the faculty mentoring committee, we will introduce to you shortly, and we'll go over their job in the next slide. And if there's anything else that you would help, we are fully open to ideas or feedback. Feel free to reach out to us through our email, from our website, to any one of the Spectrum leadership individually, absolutely anything at all. Spectrum is here to serve you guys, the students. So anything that you want to see happen, make sure to let us know. So the faculty mentoring committee consists of 6 people, 3 of which are now here. So we have Dr. Fernando Camelli, Dr. Brooke Vaughn, we have Dr. Erhai Zhao. Those are names that you might recognize. Dr. Camelli and Dr. Zhao are both professors in the department. Brooke Vaughn is the one that that helps you out with all of your class requirements in the main office. Highly useful, and they are all great people to reach out to. Here today on this call, we have Dr. Karen Sauer, Dr. Joe Weingartner, and Faith Gale. And basically, our faculty committee helps us to problem solve and in an effective way that they can communicate to faculty. So we as students can talk to the faculty mentoring committee, tell them our concerns, and they will help us bring it to the attention of the other faculty for purposes of meetings. So they represent students in faculty spaces. As of right now, students are not permitted to attend faculty meetings, even though there is an initiative by Dr. Plavchan to change that rule. In the meantime, they will represent us and our needs in faculty spaces with any information that we provide them. They also provide advice and career planning and advocacy for students. So if you ever want to reach out to speak to a professor or just upper faculty staff in the department, these are the people that you would want to reach out to, just in case you're not comfortable speaking to a student or a grad student. They are all here for you and to help you out. So now I'll turn the floor over to the members of the faculty committee that are here, if you'd like to give yourselves a brief introduction.
I can go ahead and start if no one else would like to. Okay, I'm Faith Gale. I am the Human Resources and Administrative Liaison for the department. Typically, I would work in the front office in that front right corner. But since we're remote, you can contact me via email at any time. And I'm here just to support you in any way, shape, or form. If you have any questions about anything due to resumes or positions for students, that type of stuff, you can always reach out to me. I also can assist you with the incident report form if you have any questions on that. And you can find me on People Finder, or I can type my email in the chat as well if you need it there.
Thank you. Just as a note, we will be putting up faculty bios on Spectrum's website here within the next week that will involve contact information as well, just in case someone doesn't get it from the chat. So Dr. Sauer, Dr. Weingartner.
Hi, everyone. I have two screens. That's why it looks like I'm looking to the side, but I'm really trying to still look at you. So just so that you know that's why it looks a little funny, because I have bad eyesight. Anyway, I'm Karen Sauer, and I am here on campus. I'm an experimentalist, and my lab is still running, and that's why I'm here every day. And so if you really feel like you'd like to say hello to somebody in person, you're welcome to come on by and stop by. Panera is open, and we can go get some coffee and take a walk around the block if you really need it. Anyway, nice to sort of see you, and hope you're well. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Dr. Weingartner.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe, and I'm one of the academic advisors in the department. So please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about classes or about your major or minor or anything like that, or just any other kinds of questions or concerns or want advice. Always happy to talk to you, and I just put my email in the chat.
Thank you so much for all your introductions. So before we get into our second half of our event, talking about personal statements, just as a side note to the Faculty Mentoring Committee, we have some examples that we're going to be sharing, but if you feel that there's anything that you want to contribute to the conversation, you are more than welcome to, especially from a faculty perspective, like anything that you think would be useful or helpful on personal statements. So personal statement prompts are usually very general or open-ended. They are meant to give you your own space to be as creative as you want, so you can summarize your career goals, your research interests and skills, and any personal experience that you had that really kind of ties into your passion for the field. So you might have the most specific type of questions that you might get, or for the prompts are, how did you come to be interested in this project or in this field? They might ask you to explain how your past projects have prepared you for this experience. You also want to maybe take advantage of this opportunity to talk about any leadership or teaching experience you have and how it's prepared you for this next step that you're willing to take. And this also goes for grad school applications and RAUs, and also for fellowships. So before you start this whole process, sometimes it's useful to just do a quick self-reflection and kind of just brain dump everything and just write out like topics. You don't necessarily have to plan out a very specific outline, but just trying to write down some things that you think will be important and to remind yourself to include your story. So sometimes the prompts can ask you, especially if you're a student from an underrepresented group, about, tell me about a time in your life where you had to overcome adversity. And sometimes it can sound intimidating, but just remind yourself that you don't have to force yourself to share anything that you're uncomfortable doing so. If you want to share these experiences, that's definitely very welcomed, but you shouldn't put yourself in a situation where your mental health is struggling because you feel obligated to share something extremely personal. So the first part of the self-reflection is just thinking about your story. So this could be any special, unique, distinctive, or anything that's just impressive about you. It's okay to talk about yourself positively. This is the time to do it. And sometimes it might include details of your life, any personal or family problems, history, or people or events that have shaped you into who you are today, because you want to try to help the committee to get a better, well-rounded picture of you as an applicant. They already have your resume, they know your grades. You don't have to spend your entire essay talking about that. They want to get to know you as a person. And sometimes that involves talking about something that I mentioned, difficult hardships or obstacles that are maybe a little bit less traditional than everyone goes through. So some examples of this would, if you're comfortable, is talking about any like struggles with mental health or anxiety and how you're working to overcome them. Sometimes you can, involve any family or cultural influences that have had a really big impact on your life. And sometimes that's also just mentoring. Mentoring can really help you to persist and continue to stay in the field. And sometimes that's what pushes you to go for the PhD or to try to apply to a fellowship. And I know light bulb moments sounds like a really weird phrase, but this is what I refer to as like kind of like if you've had an epiphany moment of like, this is why I really, really love to do physics, or, insert your field here. But we'll get into that a little bit more when we get to the big discussion section. And Carly.
So one thing that I wanted to bring up is that light bulb moment kind of. You want to talk about why it is you're interested in this field. What are your goals, right? So if there was that moment where, let's say you were in a class, in an astronomy class or something like that, and that's what inspired you to pursue a major in it, talk about that. Talk about, if you just decided to do research in something and we're like, I really could see myself doing this for a very long time. Talk about that. So you really want to go over when, why you became interested in the field. Also, kind of insights have you gained? How have you been learning about the field? Like I said, you could have been in a class. It could have been an introductory astronomy class. Or it could have been a physics class where you went over like a small thing or something like that. And you're like, I want to learn more about this. You could have started reading more about it, or even if it was just a visit to, a museum or something like that. But you also want to talk about what you want to do with this. What are your next steps? What do you have in mind? Why are you applying to a program like this? So what are your career goals? Career goals could include being a professor, a teacher, a scientist, an engineer. The sky's the limit, right? So your short-term goals would include grad school. You don't have to necessarily have in mind what you want to do in grad school right away. You can have some ideas, but you'll figure it out eventually. Research in a specific field, working in a particular experiment. So what is it that actually excites you? You got to show your passion, bring your personality into it. And then if you have worked a lot during your college years, what have you learned from those experiences, right? So just because you may have been working at, let's say, like a coffee shop or something like that, you gained experience there. Don't sell short anything. Just write it out and then start to compare what it is that is relevant to what you're applying to. And then just kind of talk about what strengths you have. Also, are there any gaps or discrepancies in your academic record that you should explain? That you should explain. So if you had to take some time off due to, like, taking care of yourself for mental health reasons, or if you were a primary caregiver for a little bit, talk about that. It's okay. You don't have to go into super like intense details, but it's okay to bring it up. Just be like, hey, life happened. So this is, why you'll see a gap or something like that. Okay, sorry, I forgot if it was me or not. Yeah, back to like jobs and stuff like that. Everything can be relevant. It's just figuring out which parts of it are. So, whatever clubs you've been in, whatever volunteering you've done, whatever job you've had, take it into consideration. Also, sometimes our grades aren't stellar our first year because we're still transitioning from high school into college, and it's just like, what just happened? So people will understand that. The people who are looking at your applications are human too. They've gone through life as well. They've gone through all these things. So you can mention it. Be like, yeah, I know this wasn't that great, but look, I improved. I learned from my experiences. Also, if you take a GRE and let's say, I don't know, something just wasn't, maybe you have test anxiety or something like that, right? It's okay. Your grades show who you are, and as a scientist, at least academically. So one test, it's like meh, okay, it's not a big deal. And I know that some universities are doing away with GREs, or at least their physics departments are. So eventually that may not even be an issue. And if there was a semester that didn't go well, no big deal. It happens to the best of us. But you can mention it. Be like, yeah, it happened. But I still excelled. I still got my degree. I still have a passion for physics or astronomy or whatever it is that you want to do.
And so the last kind of main topic that you typically are going to bring up in personal statements are your skills and characteristics. This is also really relevant for things like resumes you're applying to jobs, or really anything where you're trying to kind of get someone to give you some kind of position or award or something. Um, and the main questions here are just what personal characteristics and what skills you possess that will help you succeed in here. And is there a way that you're particularly unique with this? And you really want to be specific in this because you really need some kind of concrete way to demonstrate or document that you actually have this characteristic. Because anyone can just say, I'm a good public speaker. And Kat, if you can switch this slide, get really good public speaker. But that doesn't say anything. What says things is if you can actually point to either talks, presentations that you've given, whether it's in class or kind of volunteer opportunity, and writing a blog or a newsletter or something, even if that's part of your part-time job, it shows that you have these skills. And also communicating to a wide range of audiences, because a lot of scientists kind of get in this pigeonhole where they only talk to other scientists and everything is jargony, and it just, you kind of can't get out of that little bubble. And so having that skill of being able to explain things very simply is a trait, is a skill that is very, very admired and sought after in our field. And if you're interested in learning more about that, our GNU Observatory is a wonderful place to learn that. And Carly and I both worked there for many years, so we can talk all about that. Carly mentioned some things with persistence. I mean, persistence is obviously a huge deal in a physics degree. Physics degrees are hard to get. Some classes are really hard and you struggle when you work through it. But you can, instead of just saying I'm persistent, talk about a time when you actually did work through it. If you had that bad semester, like we said, that happens to everybody. But how did you move past it? And how did you kind of in your next semesters and everything kind of grow from that and end up thriving and doing even better and kind of put things in place if possible to prevent a bad semester from happening again. Coding is very also very important, but instead of saying I know Python, talk about what have you done. You know, I coded the physics of a planet moving around a star. I coded the components of an atmosphere or something like that. Or even if it's just kind of what tutorial you worked on, it gives them an idea of kind of what you're working on. And as far as self-motivation independence, what can really help here is to kind of know what you have done in extracurriculars more than just required in your classroom. I know when I'm writing a statement, like everyone has said before, I just info dump everything that I've ever done that might be sort of relevant, basically. And then from there, I kind of pare it down to what actually fits within the required part. But the thing that I always get from that, because I have so much to talk about with them, because I just am so excited and I've jumped into everything, is they can really see that when I'm excited about something, I'm go all the way through it. And that comes through without me having to say that I'm self motivated for it. And then, yeah. And so, just general advice, start early, because if you're anything like me, you probably may hate writing about yourself. It's awkward, it's cringy, and it just takes me forever because I just, it's tough. So it's nice to be able to take a lot of breaks with that, getting several sets of eyes on it, because even just with proofreading, like I'll proofread it, but I hate proofreading it over and over again because I'm just reading more about myself, and it's just, oh my God, even if I write it. So it's helpful to have other people look at it so they can pick up things you missed on, or if there's something where you're not, in the case in the last point, if you're kind of underselling yourself a little bit, your friends and your professors are going to be a lot more pushy about telling you, nope, you got to say this about yourself. You did this. This was you. Take ownership of it. And then also just being specific. Like I said before, it's kind of everything with this. You know, a lot of times, and we talked about this a little bit in the lunch talk last Wednesday, a lot of times people apply to these positions, particularly for research positions, just kind of because they're told research is good for me. I should do research. And so they get a lot of applications from people who may not be particularly, they just want to do research, but they're not really sure what it is. So you particularly have an interest in the opportunity, if you want that for a specific reason and you have particular things to give them, and you also, that opportunity can give you something in return, whether it's good for your career or it gives you skills or it gives you just something that you're very, very interested in. That's always something and that's something that people are always really excited to see, because that really gets your passion to come across. And then resources, it's pretty much the same ones that we had for the other talk. You know, our faculty is really, really good at they're very happy to read many drafts if they need to and kind of work through it. Like I said in the other talk, Joe has read pretty much every personal statement I've had to write because I hate writing them, and they're going to go to somebody else that doesn't hate reading them. And so other students, many of us have written personal statements that have won awards or honorable mentions, and we're happy to give advice. I know I am happy, and I have given out my personal statement for some of the fellowships that I've won to whoever wants it, basically, because it's tough to write, and having kind of a draft of seeing what someone else did can help inform you. And our Office of Fellowships, run by Dr. Jelani Triberger, is an outstanding resource, particularly for these statements, because they are really, really good at kind of helping you tell your story in a very, very eloquent way, in a way that really, really makes you look so good, like better than you think that you can look. And while I haven't used them, Natasha has, I know, and she can speak all about how great they are. Okay, so I guess so basically wanted to leave some time at the end basically to kind of talk about if there are different skills kind of that we would like, different, basically how to bring different things into personal statements, if there was something that was kind of confusing while we were talking, and also just to have some time at the end for us to kind of get to know each other. Since we are virtual, if we were doing this in person, we'd be probably all around a big table and just able to transition immediately from whatever we're talking about to chatting about school and life and whatever. And we really want to get to know you guys because we haven't had the chance to really do that. So we're open to either one of those. We're going to be on for a while.
Could I add some thoughts on the personal statements, Jenna?
Please do, yeah.
I thought the presentation was fantastic. I think you really hit all the important points there. So everyone should take care to follow your advice. I thought I might just give a little bit of personal perspective from when I've been on the admissions committee in the department for grad students. So what are the things that I'm looking for when I read the personal statements? And so you hit on most of it. I mean, the big thing is, what skills do you have? Why would you be a good applicant for our PhD program? And be specific, like you said. Another thing I look for is just, do you understand what grad school is? Because you'd be surprised how many essays don't convey that at all. Like seem to just not understand what does a grad student actually do? The research focus, for example, and that kind of thing. So showing an understanding of what it means to be in grad school, I think is really important. And I would, in general, advise not to spend too much time, if any, talking about your childhood. We see that a lot too. And it usually is not relevant, okay? It may be in some cases, but rarely. So usually you want to focus on what did you do in school that prepared you for grad school or for a research experience or whatever. And I also look for coherence. Does this person communicate clearly, cogently, effectively? Because those are really important skills for grad school that are hard to get in the rest of the application. So that's really critical to do that. It can't be a rambling, meandering statement. I've seen a lot of those. So you definitely want to avoid that. And like you all mentioned, the more people you can get to read it, the better. And that includes your peers, it includes faculty, it includes anyone. One of the best people I ever had read a statement was the spouse of a colleague, and it was just great feedback. So anyone you can think of to use for that would be great. I think when you're applying for awards, particularly as a grad student or beyond, you want to go even beyond what we're just talking about and make a picture of how you're going to do something important in your future. What are you aiming to do? What are the different threads of your experience, and how are they going to come together to be impactful in some way if you're going to look to win an award? So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much for that. And I would probably also
I think
add.
Darwin's talking. I heard.
Sorry?
Darwin was unmuted. I don't think we can hear him.
Oh no, it was yeah. Yeah. Oh my bad, Natasha. You keep going.
No, you go.
Okay. I just recently had to write for the REU stuff, and I had Dr. Gamir and Dr. Weigel actually check them before I submitted the personal statements. They were horrible. They're absolutely horrible. But they just told me essentially treat it like, because I had my resumes first, because for engineering internships prior. So all I did was essentially grab all the topics I had from my resume and use those for the actual personal statements. It's like achievements, stuff that I did know was relevant. That made it a lot easier to make it more of like sellable. And then afterwards is just turning it into actual essay and with words. And that was actually a little easier too. Yeah, I absolutely hate them.
One of the things that that helps me with these kinds of things is to find some quiet space and to read your own thing out loud to yourself. And you'll be very surprised at what you pick up yourself about what you said. It's amazing. One of the things that somebody who I worked for, he was a rainmaker. A rainmaker means somebody who can bring in a lot of money. And he said, well, when you write a proposal, and this is what Joe was saying for your fellowship, imagine everything goes right in your life, and that's what you write. It's hard to do it, but imagine everything that you dream goes right, and that's what you write. So
Yeah, faculty members are really useful. I had Dr. Sauer actually check my resume too, and she was able to make it very nice and wordy and actually look relevant and look like I knew what I was talking about. So it's very confusing at first.
I was gonna say if I could jump in about resumes real quick. I am a recruiter as well as working for human resources. My prior position, I did a lot of recruitment, and what I can say is I understand about making things wordy. When I applied for this position, I took it to one of my former colleagues and I was like, "Hey, can you check out my resume, see what it says?" And she was like, "Faith, what is this? Why do you have these short little bullet points? There's no specifics, there's none of this." And so we sat for at least a week or two and completely revamped my resume to make sure that it looked nice, but it also got to the points that it needed to be at. So one of the things is two things to focus on your resume that I would suggest is put in some numbers. So let's say you I'm going to make this relevant to Spectrum. So let's say you hosted a conference and that conference brought in 20 different schools. You had participants from 20 different schools. Put that in there, because seeing that those skills are there, that you can have that influence and have those connections, that's going to be really great. Also, look at your transferable skills. And this was something that was mentioned in the presentation, but as they said, write down everything that you did. If you worked as a barista at Starbucks, write down every single thing that you did during that barista position and figure out how you can transfer that to someone else. So I came in and I started on my task list, time management, that type of stuff. It's daunting, it's terrifying. I haven't had to write a personal statement myself, but I have done multiple cover letters and I despise writing cover letters. It's why should I be part of this position? And it's just not my thing. But if you can figure out what skills do I have, where can I pull them from, even stuff in your personal life with like volunteerism or club sports or anything like that, pull those out, see what you can say, put it into words, and then have someone else look at it. I will 100% say have someone else check over it, because they will see stuff that you missed.
I think there's also something to be said. Your personal statement doesn't have to be super dry and clinical. They will also want to see who you are. You are the person applying for that position. You could have the most accolades in the world, and if you're a terrible person to work with, they're not going to want you there. So you also want to make sure a little bit of your personality comes through. That will also make them sit and notice your statement above, the potentially hundreds of others that they've been reading. For instance, when I was going through my personal statement process for the GRE, I was working with the Office of Fellowships, which I can highly recommend. They will read that thing over and over for you, and it's a little bit daunting because they also return it filled with comments, and it makes you feel kind of like a terrible person, but they're helping you. And the person that was helping me told me that he helped a student with their personal statement for the GRE, that he ended up, or not the GRE, what am I talking about? The GRFP, that he ended up winning. And in the first introductory paragraph, he compared himself to God, because he said that as a coder, he's making his whole little world and he is the God of this world, and he won. So, I mean, I'm not saying you have to say you're God in your personal statement, but make sure that there's something there, there's some personality there, because that's going to make your reviewer go, wait a minute, what did I just read? And your name is going to stick in their head. So, something to be said for being a little bit weird in your personal statement. Just don't say you're God, though. I think
Make it memorable.
And we have a couple of questions from the forum. So the first one is, if a prompt asks for information you don't feel comfortable giving, for example, minority status, how can you gracefully decline to share that information? So I can talk a little about for the minority status, because I'm outspoken about all of that, but like I know for me when it comes to the things with like sharing anything that I'm not comfortable sharing in a prompt, like the examples that Kat gave, which is like what's a struggle that you overcame. Typically finding some way to kind of spin it helps. And I'm not sure for like if someone else wants to talk about something related specifically to minority status. So
Um, so I can't speak too much to it because I bring up my minority status in my essays myself. I don't wait for them to ask me. I just say it in the way that I want to say it, which is usually in just a brief mention in within the first little bit of the introduction where you're saying who you are as a person, and then I don't bring it up again. I know some schools are looking for that. Some schools are specifically looking to pad who they let in. It's not great, but it's happening behind the scenes there. But usually what I do, it's kind of like what Jenna said. I just pivot on it. I mention it, I put it out there, and then I don't talk for the rest of my essay because there are more important things than I did besides who my parents happened to be. Because I had no say in that. So uh, otherwise, I think you could find an artful way to kind of dance around that, like taking the big, a struggle you overcame. They might be asking about a personal struggle. If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, bring up an academic struggle that you're comfortable sharing. Something small, you did badly in a class and then you turned it around and you aced the final. Something smaller, it's still a struggle, you overcame it. You don't have to, I'm sure there's a better way to say this, but you don't have to trauma vomit to get a position. And if they require you to do so, you probably don't want that position in the first place.
and that's something else too is that many times, at least everything that I've seen. So if whoever sent that in wants to send in the exact prompt that they've seen, we can talk more specifically about that. And we have faculty members here who can also help kind of guide our word choices for that. But typically, whenever I've seen things that particularly ask for minority status, it's related to something like a position that's specifically for a minority, basically, whether it's a scholarship for women. And so, obviously, somewhere in there, you're going to want to make sure that you say that you're a woman or whatever. But if it's something where they're asking it and you're not comfortable saying it and it's not related to that, I also have no problem just leaving it out because you're in charge of the information that you give to people. And like Natasha said, if someone wants you to trauma vomit and, share your whole life and things you're not comfortable with, that's not a great start to your relationship with them, basically. And you have to end a place where you're going to be comfortable and that will respect you as a person, not just whatever number they want to add to. Um, so we have another question, unless Carly or Kat or anybody else have anything they want to say about that.
I kind of just want to add one little thing to that as well. Yes, you're applying to this place and you're talking about why you would be a good fit, but also are they a good fit for you? Because if you're going to be spending a lot of time there and it's just going to become your life, you got to make sure that it's good for you too.
Okay. Any last things or move on to the next question? 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the next one, this is actually probably more towards the faculty members that are here because you're in charge of all the research opportunities, and maybe Karen, you especially. Um, Somebody is asking, in regards to research opportunities, with the pandemic still being as bad as it is, are there any remote research opportunities for those with concerns of catching COVID? I ask for those who are at higher medical risk.
There's quite a few people, faculty members who do computation. And so, I think there's a lot of research opportunities that are remote that are around computation and theoretical work. Experimental work, for me, I had 3 undergraduates work in the fall with me, and I think I have maybe 2, Darwin's one of them who's working with me now. But it's a little bit limited because of the social distancing. So I know people are saying they don't necessarily want to come on campus. It's also just very limited who can come on campus because I have to have like 1 room per person. So it pretty restricts it a lot. So, but there are quite a few, maybe Joe can talk about this, quite a few people who do computation. I think there's a lot of research opportunities in that area.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you want to do astronomy or astrophysics, you have lots of opportunities to do remote research. I wouldn't worry about that at all.
I will say all of us that are up here are doing research in some capacity or working with something, and we're all completely remote. So we've got exoplanets. I'm supermassive black holes, and Kat is just physics education research. So there's a lot of other opportunities there. Okay, and then we have a really good question. What if you talk about personal stuff on a personal statement and it seems as if you're trying to get pity? I'm nervous on what and what not to include.
Well, I would say that's why you want somebody else to read it, right? Ask them, how does it come across? Does it sound like, I want, does it sound like basically trauma vomit or like, I want people to feel pity for me or something like that. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just have somebody else read it to see what other impression people are getting from it.
And no one's gonna judge you who reads your first draft. Like, we have all written the worst draft that we could possibly have written. We have been there, we have cringed over it. It's totally fine. Like, we're not going to think that you as a person are trying to get pity. It's just a matter of tone, basically. And that's something that is very easy to work with. And it may take several edits and back and forth, but that's what this process is for.
As far as being nervous as to what to include and what not to include, this is the way that I always picture it. This personal statement is going to go and be read by a person that I don't know. I vaguely know what that person is qualified to do, what level they're at, just by nature of what I'm applying to and what admissions committees look like. I have a vague sense of that. So I always imagine, like, is this something that in the right circumstance, I would physically say to the person that would read this essay? If the answer is no, I'm not putting it in my essay. If it's something that, yeah, I would be comfortable sharing this with X type of person that I have drawn in my head, then sure, you can put it in there. As far as making it out to be sounding like you're getting pity, obviously have somebody else read it. That's top tier, best thing you can do. Also talk about how you made the best out of whatever situation you were in. What was the solution to the situation that you're describing? If there wasn't a solution, how did you put the best spin on it that you possibly could have put on it? Like, how did you get yourself out of it? To me, when I read something like that, it doesn't come across as, oh, I'm looking for pity. That comes across as, this is a person just saying, here's what happened to me and here's how I got myself out of it. And that's an important skill for a person to be able to have.
I'll just add to that. So if you're comfortable enough to share personal moments, and I'm honestly, I think it's rare for people to be worried that you're sharing too many personal moments because there's always a word limit. But it's important to think about, okay, what I'm willing to share and what I want to include in my personal statement, is there a way that you can tie that to why you chose to be in this field, or make sure to tie it to something that shows your growth, like what Natasha was talking about. So I struggled with that a lot in the beginning when I was trying to put together my personal statement, because my thing was that I wasn't ready to talk about certain things that were very, very important events that happened that led to why I chose physics and why I really wanted to stay in physics and get a PhD. But if you're comfortable enough sharing that, I think that's really powerful. And I wouldn't worry about people thinking that you come off as trying to get pity. Because if people judge you for sharing your story, that's not your fault. That's their fault for making poor choices.
So that is all the questions we have, but I just realized that we never actually introduced ourselves. We introduced the faculty committee, but not us. So we should probably start that. So I'm Jenna, I'm a grad student. I'm actually in my last year of grad school because I finally got a postdoc. I'll be working at NASA Goddard starting this summer. I have been waiting for this, guys. And yeah, I do research with Shabita Satyapal studying supermassive black holes and dwarf galaxies. Um, I went to GMU for undergrad. I was a transfer student from Nova Community College. So everything about that, I am more than happy to talk about. Actually, was at William Mary for a semester before that, before I had to leave for health reasons. So I've got a whole bunch of things that I'm happy to talk about to any mentee or anyone that just wants to kind of know what it's like to go through these different parts. Who's next?
Hi guys, I'm Natasha. I'm a senior undergrad here at Mason, applying to grad schools now. Well, I already applied. I'm just waiting for them to let me know what they think of me now. Also did an astrophysics degree, and my specialty is in exoplanets for right now. So I work with Dr. Peter Plafchan. Things about myself, I don't know. Anyone here can, reach out at any point in time, whether that's over Discord or email or whatever other methods, carrier pigeon, I don't know. And ask for any help at all. I'm always down to point people to the right direction, because I know that when I came in as a freshman, I did not have a, conglomerate of people pointing me in the right direction. I had Joe, and so subsequently I spent many hours a week in his office. Apologies. And he eventually pointed me in the right direction that led to Spectrum. So yeah. Anyone who's next?
You can go. Oh no, okay, fine, I'll go. Okay, my name is Carly. I'm actually an alumna of George Mason University. I got a double majored in physics and astronomy. So right now I'm kind of in this like gap period between undergrad and graduate school because life happens. But yeah, I'm currently working for Apple right now as a technician. I get to play with the insides of phones, which is pretty cool. But unrelated to what I really want to do, most of my stuff is astro. So I've done a lot of outreach. So basically any observatory in the DMV, I've probably worked at it. So you can definitely talk to me about, outreach, stargazing and things like that.
I'm Kat. I am in my second year of the physics PhD program here, and I'm the weird person that does physics education, but that's okay because I love it. Figuring out how that works in a PhD program, I don't love as much, but that's okay. My researches focus a lot on mentorship programs and how mentoring can help undergraduate students feel like they belong specifically in physics, and how I can help increase your physics identity and just help you be recognized as a physicist, because you all are. And I do what I can to pay that forward. I was also a transfer student, so I'm originally from Miami. I did my AA at a community college, and then I transferred to a four-year institution, and then I moved up here for my PhD. And I don't really love the beach. That's like one fun thing about me. I love the snow. So I've been makeshift sledding, and it's been great.
All right. So we've reached the end of our structured time. So we're going to go ahead and end the recording here. But we're all going to stay on in case people want to just hang out, have a discussion, introduce yourselves if you're not familiar.